Stacey King back to the line. The crowd detecting the possibility of a run by the Bulls, who have been sparked by this unit. Stacey King, Scott Williams, Scott Pippen up front.
Stacey King, a former Chicago Bulls champ and a beloved member of the current broadcast team, has died at the age of 59. Wrigley Field posted a tribute to King on their scoreboard tonight. Our Charlie DeMar joining us now live from the United Center with reaction from the sports world and Bulls fans, Charlie, who are hurting tonight.
And Chris, good evening. Tributes have been pouring in throughout the day for Stacey King, the three-time NBA champion and longtime Bulls announcer, of course a fan favorite. But for those who knew King off of the court, he really is remembered for so much more tonight.
Rose blows in. Shot of the goal! Too big, too strong, too fast, too good!
For the last 2 decades, his calls on the Bulls broadcast made highlights jump through the screen.
What are you doing, Dragons? Did you not get the memo?
Stacey King remembered for his iconic catchphrases.
Drive home safely, Chicago, beat, beat.
And nicknames for players.
Who's that is?
King brought that same energy as a 3-time NBA champion for the Bulls.
He had done it for so many years, so many iconic calls.
Former Chicago Bull Kendall Gill worked on the broadcast team with King.
Respected by the players, respected by the media, never threw anybody under the bus, but always told the truth about what he saw.
Outside the United Center, a bouquet of flowers were left with some of King's most memorable lines.
I just am sad that we don't get to see him next season. The team hasn't been great. He made Bulls basketball fun to watch. I feel pretty devastated. It was one of those news where you knew where you're at.
The circumstances around King's death are unknown. Police dispatch audio reveals that paramedics were called to his River Forest home Sunday morning.
Caller should be from their father.
King is survived by his 4 sons. Brandon King said in part, while many of you knew him as a player for the Bulls or as a broadcaster on TV, to me, he was so much more. He was my hero, my role model, my biggest supporter, and my big twin.
The Bulls ownership released a statement tonight saying that King loved being a Chicago Bull and that you could really feel it both when he played and then when he was behind the mic. Stacey King was 59 years old.
I was the first, one of the first. My first day was state trooper coming, putting me in the back seat of the car, and meeting the other black kids with 6 of us. And seeing all of those parents and also KKK members having signs and throwing cans at us, spitting at us. We lived in the threat of death every day. So I was just lost in this vacuum between integration and segregation and racism. That was my childhood. I was angry for years. Angry. Very angry.
This next conversation is about the intersection of 2 remarkable lives. The first is Robert Coles, child psychiatrist, Harvard professor, Pulitzer Prize winner. The other is Ruby Bridges, civil rights activist and author. But back in 1960, she was a little girl, 6 years old, who became the first black child to desegregate the all-white William Franz Elementary School in New Orleans. Well, Robert Coles, who studied the emotional effects of desegregation, was there as federal marshals worked to escort her inside through a mob of white people.
200 people waiting at 8:30 in the morning to tell her they were going to kill her. What would you expect? You'd expect that a child going through that would pretty soon start developing symptoms and be in trouble.
From that moment, Coles was on a mission.
I thought to myself, I would like to know that child. I'd like to know what's happening to her.
Robert Coles spent the rest of that year talking with and writing about Ruby. He died on June 4th at the age of 97, so we have called Ruby Bridges to remember him and remember a relationship that changed both their lives. Ruby Bridges, welcome. It is so good to speak with you again.
Oh, thank you so much, Mary Louise. It's my pleasure.
What do you remember about the first time you met Robert Coles?
It was just a little eerie, just listening to his voice just then. You know, being 6 years old, I had no idea that he was a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And he would come over to visit.
At your house?
At my house. But we spent the majority of the time together, he and I. We would sit at the kitchen table, and I was always excited about seeing him. He would bring gifts, which were crayons and drawing paper. And that's pretty much how we communicated. We would sit at the kitchen table. He would ask me questions and ask me to draw things for him. And I saw him as a friend and was excited about his visit.
I'm picturing y'all sitting at that kitchen table, drawing pictures back and forth. It sounds he was clearly learning from you, and you were learning from him.
I grew up in a family, African-American family, where pretty much in the 60s you were seen but not heard. So I had no idea what was happening around me at the time. It was very different from what I was accustomed to, because I'd gone to kindergarten at an all-black school where everyone looked like me and had a great time, and now I found myself in a new school that emptied out the day that I arrived. So Dr. Coles would come and visit, and he did that for 3 years. So I saw him up until I was about 9 years old.
Yeah. He went on to write a series of books, Children of Crisis, won the Pulitzer Prize for it. The first book in the series was your story, Ruby Bridges. What was it like to grow up and read his account of your experiences?
It helped me to understand, because the truth of the matter is that after that year was over, pretty much school was normal. The kids that had left the year before, some of them returned. There were black and white kids together. Mm-hmm. So that second year was harder for me than the first. I felt like I was, maybe I dreamed everything, that it didn't happen at all. So I believe having Dr. Coles there to ask me questions and discuss certain issues really helped me, even though I didn't realize it at the time.
Oh, it's so interesting. Yeah. It was almost as though you were learning new things about your own story through reading about his account years later. Yeah. So I last interviewed you about your children's book, I Am Ruby Bridges. And I know you make a habit of visiting schools and talking with kids and helping them understand your history, which of course is also our history as a nation. As I was thinking about this conversation, I was thinking how powerful that is, flipping the roles. Today, you are the famous teacher sharing what you have learned with a new generation that's come up behind you.
I have to say it's been an amazing journey, and I often feel like I have one foot in the past, one in the present, and I'm still trying to figure things out, and here we are today. Seems as if we're reliving history all over again, fighting for the same rights that we did back in the 60s. It's very confusing for me, so I can only imagine what it must be like for kids today.
The 6-year-olds out there now.
Trying to navigate through all of the confusion in this country and what's happening. I often wonder, is there a Dr. Coles for them? But you're right, so much of what he did has shaped my life. And that wasn't something that I realized until later on in life.
When was the last time you saw Robert Coles?
I had an opportunity to visit with him about a month ago. His son and I, who are very close, reached out to me and suggested that I come and visit with him. He was actually in hospice, and so I did. And he was sort of in and out because he was suffering from Alzheimer's. But there was a moment when his son mentioned my name, Ruby Bridges, and I said to him, "You remember Ruby Bridges, don't you? In New Orleans?" And this huge smile came over his face, and he said, "New Orleans." He said, A Streetcar Named Desire, and Camellia Grill. Camellia Grill was one of his favorite places to go. So I knew that he connected at that moment, and then he started to talk about his time there.
Yeah.
He went back to 1960, and he said, my wife, Jane, said that I should help that little girl. I should talk to those kids. And he said, and I did. And I said, yes, you did. And I said, you did a really good thing, and you've had an amazing life. And he said, you think so? And I said, you did a really good thing. He said, yes, it was a good thing. So he went right back to 1960. He remembered it.
Oh, that gives me goosebumps. It's beautiful.
Yes, it was amazing. And he kind of leaned back, and he said, thank you. And he lifted my hand and kissed the back of my hand.
Ruby Bridges is an activist, author, and founder of the Ruby Bridges Foundation. She's remembering her friend, Dr. Robert Coles, who died last week. Ruby Bridges, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary Louise. It's been great to be able to walk back in time and think about what he meant to me and evidently what I meant to him. I appreciate the opportunity.
The gay rights movement is changing everything.
Mr. Leahy is not here.
Christopher Leahy, the man accused of stabbing 19-year-old University of Washington student Juniper Blessing more than 40 times, chose to stay in his jail cell, skipping his own arraignment while his defense team stood before the judge.
Based on our observations, we don't think he's competent to move forward or assist in the proceedings.
That development lands more than 3 weeks after the attack at Nordheim Court, an off-campus student housing complex.
I think there's been a general uptick in worry amongst students, just for their own safety, their friends' safety.
Seattle police say surveillance footage captures Leahy walking into the same room where Juniper Blessing was doing laundry the evening of May 10th.
It's hard for everybody living here.
One resident who asked to remain anonymous says the attack is forcing a hard look at overdue improvements at the complex.
The laundry room in the back, the door wasn't able to properly lock for a long time.
I hope they take this seriously and maybe security increases.
UW owns the property. A company called Graystar runs it. Now both face mounting questions as conversations about safety grow louder.
The loss is felt throughout the campus.
Today, the court pushed ahead without Leahy, ordering a competency evaluation.
The parties agree that he should be sent down for observation to Western State and what additional treatment that they can provide him.
Now, the murder case will continue, but the competency question must be resolved before a plea can be entered. Madison?
And Natalie, do we know how long the competency evaluation is expected to take?
Oh, the defendant will be at Western State for observation for 15 days. Then the parties will meet again on June 25th. That's when we'll see where things stand at the court. Madison?
Natalie, so you'll be live for us in Seattle tonight, and of course we plan to be there on the 25th to bring you any updates in this case. Natalie, thanks.
And so you go straight north from the continent. You can either go around or you can go across the Mediterranean, and you're in those little countries of Europe, and they're smack into the germ people. Do you all get this? This word means disease. Right in the center of Europe. Germ man.
The U.S. has counted about 2,000 measles cases so far this year. Still, more parents than ever before are opting their kids out of vaccines. Michigan used to have one of the highest school vaccination exemption rates, so public officials made it harder for parents to opt out. It worked until it didn't. Kate Wells with our partner KFF Health News explains.
Michigan is a state where you can opt your kid out of vaccines for pretty much any reason. And so for many years, if you were trying to register your kid for school and you forgot to get them that tetanus booster.
At the last minute, oops, I forgot to do this. I'm just going to sign a waiver and be done with it.
Norm Hess is the executive director of the Michigan Association for Local Public Health.
That's not really the way we want parents to make decisions on this issue.
So in 2014, health officials created a new rule for parents wanting a waiver for religious or personal reasons. The parents first had to attend a vaccine education session at the local health department in person.
Essentially listen to an educational session, and then sign a waiver that goes into their record.
Dr. Juan Marquez is a local county medical director in the Ann Arbor area. Initially, this new process worked. Fewer parents were getting these waivers. But some parents felt like these education sessions were insulting. Jennifer Wartz is a Republican state representative. At a vaccine choice rally last year, she talked about her experience as a mom attending an education session.
It was very demeaning. I had a very negative experience there simply because we made the choices that we felt were best for each one of our children.
Then when the pandemic hit, the anger and animosity around lockdowns and mandates really spilled into these sessions. Marquez, the county medical director, says they became unsafe for staff.
You can imagine to come through a session, sit through, have somebody yell at you or, just say not nice things to your face and just kind of sit through hours of that is demoralizing.
Last fall at a high school north of Detroit, a dad refused to get the waiver for his kids. The school said, look, to keep them legally enrolled here, we need that waiver. This led to a series of confrontations, and the principal called the police. The sheriff's deputy even drove to the dad's house. Here's the deputy, Kevin Smith, during a follow-up call with the dad as recorded on his body cam.
You got to go through the health department and do their stupid 10-minute course and sign your stupid waiver to have your kids enrolled.
This year, health officials in that county, St. Clair County, decided to just flat out drop this requirement. It's now the first county to make vaccine waivers available entirely online. Dr. Remington Nevin is the medical director.
Parents who have felt coerced, parents who have felt pressured into getting vaccines, they are going to experience a new era of vaccine choice in St. Clair County.
And state health officials are not fighting the change. In fact, the state has helped more than 30 counties switch to online education sessions. Here's a clip from the online session the state helped develop.
For diseases that spread easily, a few unvaccinated people can start an outbreak.
After that, parents still have to go to their local health department, but only to get the waiver signed. The goal now is to try to meet people where they are, offer information, and don't burn bridges. But the growing number of people opting out of vaccines worries Dr. Natasha Bagdasarian, the state's chief medical executive, especially given recent measles outbreaks in Michigan.
When one of these measles cases ends up in a low immunization community, that's when the ember really has a chance to expand and become a wildfire.
She says in some Michigan schools now, as many as 70% of students are not fully vaccinated. In Ann Arbor, Michigan, I'm Kate Wells.
A terrible thing to waste. Environmental racism and its assault on the American mind. Written by Harriet A. Washington.
NPR's Planet Money team has been looking into food and health regulations, like how companies can sneak new chemicals past the FDA and into our food and supplements. Here's NPR's Sarah Gonzalez.
Carol Reedy remembers eating toast and this lentil thing when the pain started.
Just agonizing. Yeah, it was sort of like,
This was a few years ago, but at the time, people all over the U.S. were also showing up in emergency rooms with extreme pain. Carol was just told she needed her gallbladder removed, but no one knew exactly why until she saw this chatter on Reddit.
They were like, hey, anybody have to have their gallbladder removed after they ate this Daily Harvest thing?
Daily Harvest is the company that made that lentil thing that Carol ate. And this was not a case of a contaminated batch of bad lentils. There was something sprinkled into the lentils. Daily Harvest was using a brand new food additive that was being marketed as a new superfood, high in protein. It was called Terra flour, made from the seed of a Terra tree. It just was never properly tested for safety.
This did enough damage that the only solution would have been taking out the gallbladder.
That's crazy that one food product can permanently damage An organ.
You're telling me.
The Food and Drug Administration didn't even know this new additive had made its way into the U.S. food supply until after hundreds of people got sick. Liver dysfunction, liver failure, gastrointestinal injuries. 42 people had their gallbladders removed. Technically, under the current law, chemical manufacturers and food companies do have to prove to the FDA that their new chemical or additive is safe before it's used in food. But written into this law is a loophole for things that are generally recognized as safe, or GRAS, G-R-A-S. And the FDA and more companies have taken this loophole to mean that your own scientists at your own chemical plant can self-certify that your brand new chemical or additive is safe. And then you just notify the FDA.
The FDA can look at that and say, this chemical looks kind of similar to this other chemical that we know is a carcinogen. Is your chemical also a carcinogen?
This is Melanie Benish, a lawyer at the Environmental Working Group.
And you as a company then can go, whoa. That's a lot of questions. I am going to ask you to stop your review, please. You are going to stop thinking about my chemical. And then I can go back and redo it and resubmit it. Or I can do nothing and then just use it in food anyway.
And just use it in food anyway. That's the loophole. And there's even a loophole to the loophole, known as secret GRAS.
Secret GRAS is when you skip telling the FDA altogether.
99% of chemicals in our food right now were added through these loopholes rather than the long FDA review process, including that Terra flour that Carol lost her gallbladder over. What happened to Daily Harvest?
They were ultimately purchased by Chobani, the yogurt people.
That's Bill Marler, a lawyer who represented Carol and hundreds of others. Did they have a consequence?
No, but the only consequence was me. I sued them and got money from their insurance company.
We did ask Chobani for comment, no response, but Carol did just get her settlement a few months ago. $100,000.
Bought myself a purse. This is secondhand.
It's an interesting shape. Kind of like a pear or a gallbladder.
Kind of looks like it, that's why it's green.
She calls it her gallbladder purse. Sarah Gonzalez, NPR News.
That's why we have to think as black people. Stop singing and dancing and start thinking.
Wow.
Thinking and reading. I say reading is more important than watching TV. And not getting addicted to looking at those small iPhone screens. See, where you were getting accustomed to looking there in a narrow space as opposed to paying attention broadly to what is happening around you. See, and people are getting addicted.
How long can you focus for?
Maybe like 5 minutes, but I'm really locked in, maybe like 20 minutes. On a day-to-day, it might be kind of low, like 5 minutes.
I don't think I can really focus.
My attention span right now actually is quite low.
I actually am worried about my concentration level because it's 0.
The world is a busy place. Phones, ever present, our uniquely human capacity for thinking deeply is waning. The Currents and Penman spoke with people outside the main branch of the Vancouver Public Library in downtown Vancouver about their ability to concentrate.
I'm being conditioned by these stupid phones and these devices, okay? That's a fact. So I know my attention span is very low, and it's not good. It's not good for people, and it's not good for relationships.
I think deeply about staying concentrated, honestly, almost every day. Like, it's something I'm really trying to focus on. There's, like, a lot of jokes about it online, about, like, having, like, fried attention spans, and it's, like, something that people, like, think is super normal, and I think that kind of makes people like think that, oh, if everyone's struggling with it, it's fine.
Yeah, I'll be thinking about something, and then all of a sudden I'll be looking at my phone. 30 seconds later, I'm like, oh, this is cool, and then I'll go over to the TV and see what's on there. It's never one thing. Focus is just all over the map.
I guess I will say that it's important for everyone to really try. It's kind of like an act of rebellion in these days with AI kind of being so pervasive, to really take ownership of your ability to critically think and challenge things.
Like, people don't have an opportunity, especially kids, to just kind of be bored and kind of do nothing, which makes it really hard to have focus, because if you're doing nothing, you could think about one thing to do as opposed to like 500 things to look at.
What does it mean when we can't concentrate anymore? And what can we do about that? Well, our next guest says we are facing an attack on our ability to think. He is calling for what he says should be a revolution in defense of thinking. Cal Newport is a professor of computer science at Georgetown University and the author of the best-selling book, Deep Work, Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World. How is your attention span?
Well, hopefully it's doing okay, but I work really hard at it. Sort of like asking someone who has a regular jogging habit, how are your lungs doing? And they say, oh, they're pretty good.
You wrote, and I want to get to the habit in a moment and the exercise that you put into this. You wrote an opinion piece in the New York Times recently, and it said, I'm done ceding my brain, the core of all that makes me who I am, to the financial interests of a small number of technology billionaires or the short-sighted conveniences of hyperactive communication styles. What were you seeing happen to yourself that led you to write that?
Well, I noticed there's a passivity we seem to have in the face of this onslaught to our ability to actually sustain our attention. I certainly noticed it in my own life. You have the digital equivalent of junk food coming through on your phones, trying to divert you away from things that are going to push your brain more. And then you have tools like AI that are trying to offload more mental exercise from you. Oh, we'll do this writing for you. We'll do this thinking for you. And we were sort of sitting back, saying, well, what can you do? It's technology. And I was sort of getting tired of that. I said, this actually makes me a little bit upset that these companies are coming at a core aspect of my humanity, my ability to direct my brain at things I find important, and I don't want to just sit back and take it.
What specifically is happening? I ask in part because you wrote that great book, Deep Work, a decade ago, and you wrote about the strategies that people could employ to find time to think deeply. But in that Times piece, you said, we're losing the ability to think deeply at all, regardless of how much space we can find in our schedules for that. So what is going on right now?
Yeah, it's a troubling development. 10 years ago when I wrote that book, I thought the issue was just make more time for deep work during your job and things will be better. Now, 10 years later, you could make all the time in the world, and I think most of us would actually struggle to make good use of it. And I think what really happened here was the rise of the attention economy. So you had these tech companies who were making massive fortunes off of trying to monetize our attention. And then this was followed by the AI revolution, which piggybacked on top of that and said, okay, now your brains are weak from spending a decade staring at these phones. Now we can offload any type of thinking you have left to do. And so I think that 1-2 punch of phone-delivered attention economy distraction, followed more recently by generative AI, has really put our brains into a much worse situation than even we were 10 years ago.
I mean, full confession, I'm somebody who, if I'm reading a book, and I read all the time, I have to put my phone in another room. I need to physically be separated from the phone, and I like to think that I'm able to concentrate, but I have to put it away because I know that it will attract me. What's going on there?
There's a part of our brain that you can call the short-term motivation system, and what it does is it evaluates things that are proximate, things you could be doing right now, and basically evaluates how much of a reward would we get from that activity. And if the reward is high, it's going to generate a cascade of neurotransmitters that feels like motivation to do that thing. So if your phone is nearby, your brain has been trained through the use of these algorithmically optimized apps like TikTok or Instagram that it will give you a good reward. So if the phone is nearby, your short-term reward system, it's firing inside your head saying, pick up the phone, pick up the phone. We are evolved to listen to those systems. And this is why actually literally having the phone in a different place where the friction to go get it would be high gives you a completely different cognitive experience because your short-term motivation system doesn't have that option to vote for, and it makes a big difference.
What role does AI play in helping to reduce that friction that you just talked about?
What I've been seeing when I've been studying how early adopters of AI, so this first couple of years, how are people adopting generative AI tools? One of the big signals I'm seeing is that they're using it to reduce cognitive strain. We talk a lot about productivity. We talk a lot about automating work we don't want to be doing. That's not what I'm actually seeing on the ground. People are turning to these Gen AI tools in cases where even if it makes their life harder in the sense of that tasks take longer to complete, if they can avoid the strain, for example, of staring at a blank page and having to fill that in with words, they will do almost anything to do it. So it's come along and given us an easy way to avoid some of the last remaining acts of cognitive strain that still remained in our lives.
You say that we are losing our ability to think deeply at all, and that to some people might sound dramatic. What does that mean at the most elemental level?
It means we cannot sustain our mind's eye for an extended period of time on a target of our choice. That's what I'm really talking about. So to be able to think deeply is to say, okay, there's something going on in my life I want to figure out. I can actually turn my mind's eye internal and try to figure out, why do I feel this way, or what should I do? Or I have an external problem I'm trying to solve. It's like a business strategy that we need to update. I can turn my mind's eye onto that and sustain my focus and try to actually understand what we should do here that's better. So that contemplative ability of aiming our mind's eye at our own will is critical to the human experience, and that is what I think we're losing.
Talk a bit more about that and what the broader consequences of losing that ability to think deeply are on our economy, on our society, and beyond.
There are economic impacts for sure. In the U.S., for example, somewhere around 40 to 50% of the economy now is dedicated to what's known as intensive knowledge industries. So these are things, whether it's like R&D or computer programming or aerospace design, that require concentrated thought to actually do well at. So if we lose our ability to focus, there's an economic hit, but there's also a political hit as well, right? I mean, the ability to bring in complicated information and sustain your thinking on issues that are affecting you is critical to be a participant in a political democracy. And we have the personal hit. The ability to control our mind's eye is how we expand our moral imagination. It's how we better understand ourselves and our lives and our place in the world. In that New York Times piece, I talk about Martin Luther King at this pivotal moment early in his career during the Montgomery bus boycotts, sitting there at his kitchen table just reflecting. And that's when he really solidified this idea, hey, you need to stand up for justice. It was reflection. It was deep thinking that helped form the cause that he then pursued so vigorously. So we lose a lot when we cede our ability to focus on what we want to over to these companies.
We also lose a bit of who we are, right? One of the questions that we keep asking on this program is, what does it mean to be human now? How is thinking and thinking deeply at the core of what it means to be human?
Well, I think we underestimate the degree to which our sense of self is constructed. It's constructed over time, in part by taking in experiences, ways we feel, things that happen, and then taking the time to actually try to fit this into some sort of cognitive scaffolding that defines our sense of ourself and our place in the world. It's an act of self-reflection. It's an act of contemplation. And when you lose that ability, those moments where you're just you alone with your thoughts, why am I sad about this? How am I going to react to this disappointment? What do I feel like is not going well in my life? All of that is the result of being able to sit there, aim your mind's eye at something important, and keep it quietly sustained there. So I think our sense of selves become much more fractured. We become much more reactive, just sort of bouncing from one stimuli to another delivered through glowing screens. And I think that's a diminished form of our humanity.
There's a neat thing that you do in this piece in which you draw a parallel between the moment that we're living through now and the transformation and the shift around how we understood exercise that happened in the 50s and 60s. Tell me about that.
Yeah, to me, this is hopeful, right? If you look back to the mid-20th century, we did not generally think a lot about diet and exercise. We had, in some sense, bigger fish to fry, and it wasn't something we thought much about. And then there was this transition that happened, especially in the 1950s and 60s, where A, our food got industrialized and less healthy, and B, we switched to more of a suburban-style car culture, so physical activity went down, and we got really physically unhealthy. And there was a revolution in thinking we had, where we said, oh, diet matters, exercise matters. Now, that sounds so obvious to the 21st century listener, but this was actually a revolution in how we thought about ourselves and our health. I think something similar can and should happen for our cognitive fitness, that we're at a point now where we say, you know what, we never used to think about this before, but our ability to sustain focus on things that are important is really critical. And because our environment has shifted, we're getting really bad at it. Oh, we need to really prioritize this now. We need to care about our cognitive fitness and take proactive, focused steps to be stronger mentally. So this is sort of what I'm calling for, is a revolution in cognitive fitness similar to the 20th century revolution in physical fitness.
Why do you use that word revolution?
That's the way I think about it, because it was a somewhat sudden and significant shift in the way that we understood the world and acted. I also like this idea that it's pushing back. Revolutions have a sense of resistance. And I think that's where we are right now as well, is that we need to say, wait a second. We're not just sitting here passively taking in information about, oh, I guess this is what AI is doing now. I guess this is just what happens on our phones. We have agency.
One of the things that happened that spurred that revolution when it came to physical fitness was when the president had a heart attack, right?
Yeah, Eisenhower had a heart attack. He was out playing golf in Denver. And they made this decision, the White House made this decision, that they were going to bring out Paul Dudley, who was this sort of pioneering cardiologist who had started the American Heart Association, to brief the press and to say, let me educate you about heart attacks and cardiovascular health. And it was in that briefing that a lot of Americans for the first time were really given the message, hey, what you eat can make a difference on your heart health. Actually, like, you have a say in this. This is not just the fickle finger of fate that's going to come down and touch you randomly in your 60s and you may or may not die. And that was actually a revolutionary new idea for a lot of people. Oh, your diet matters for your longevity.
Do we need an equivalent of Eisenhower's heart attack to spur this kind of action, to spur this revolution, do you think?
Well, I've been wondering if, for example, some of the things that have been happening, especially here in the States with smartphones and social media and kids, I think this has been very effective, that we had this large policy shift that seemingly happened overnight, where schools across the country said, you know what, you really shouldn't have phones in schools. And the results have been anecdotally and quantitatively overwhelmingly positive. We've had the successful lawsuits recently against Meta that's also been happening in the States about, hey, your product is causing harm. You don't get to just shrug your shoulders and say technology is technology. Like, you built this, and it caused harm for these kids. So I think those could be watershed moments. And I think AI is playing an interesting role as well, because unlike a lot of other technologies where we liked them at first, and then over time they became a more negative presence, the average person is just hearing doom and dread deadlines about these technologies and are scratching their heads and saying, well, why are you building these things? All we hear is headline after headline where you're bragging about how all of our jobs are going to go away and all of our systems are going to collapse. I think both these things together is creating a sort of anti-technology sentiment that maybe will have a similar impact as the Eisenhower heart attack.
So let's talk about what that revolution would look like. What is the cognitive equivalent of exercise, of going for a jog?
Well, I think we have to look at both parts of physical health, which is nutrition and exercise. So what you consume and what you do. So, I mean, I would imagine at an individual level, this might mean, oh, I care about what information I consume just like I care about what food I consume, which means, for example, I'll look at something like TikTok and say that has no nutritional value.
You call TikTok a Dorito, a digital Dorito.
It's an ultra-processed product, right? A Dorito is not really a food. We broke down the elements of foods into their stock components, remixed them in a lab to be hyper-palatable, and it's, to quote Michael Pollan, an edible food-like substance that is highly addictive and does nothing really good for us. Well, TikTok video is the same thing. They've broken down human content into its constituent elements, right? We'll have millions of people just uploading, trying everything they can. And then we'll have algorithms sort through this to try to find like the exact sequence of sort of colors and movements and pictures and themes that's going to be irresistible for you, the user. It's a digital Dorito. And maybe that's not something we need to consume. And on the exercise front, this is where things like reading real books, writing, not trying to avoid it, but embracing the strain of writing, and going for thinking walks. I'm just going to reflect while I move, just like Aristotle did, you know, way back when in the ancients, when he would walk the grounds of the Lyceum thinking. I'm going to be peripatetic, and I'm just going to walk and think. Like, that's going to be my cognitive exercise, and avoiding ultra-processed content, maybe that'll be my cognitive nutrition.
So my doctor would say, don't eat the Doritos. Are you suggesting that we don't use social media whatsoever?
Well, at the very least, I would say short-form video content that's algorithmically curated. Yeah, let's not do it. I'm talking TikTok. I'm talking about Reels on Instagram. I think we need to walk away from that like we walk away from, as adults, we just don't eat a lot of Twinkies. Other type of social media, hey, if I'm following a particular person on Instagram, it's like an author I like, and I go on there every once in a while to like see their latest videos, that's okay. I mean, maybe that's like you have the occasional slice of pizza. But I do think we need to start thinking in those terms of like there's certain cognitive foods that if we're adults, we shouldn't be eating, and if we have kids, we shouldn't let that be their main part of their diet.
That it's not that it's no good for you, that it's actually harmful to you, that this is something that we need to think about in terms of causing harm.
I think so. I think if you're looking at a service like TikTok for 4 or 5 hours a day, there's all sorts of primary and secondary harms that's causing in exchange for really no benefit, right? That there's much better ways to get whatever benefit that is, be it diversion or entertainment or being informed. There's much healthier ways to get those same benefits.
Is there room for moderation, he says, as somebody who might eat a Dorito or two?
I mean, I don't know if you've tried to do this before. Have you ever tried to open a bag of potato chips and say, look, I'm just going to eat a few while this is here?
There was a good ad campaign that was about that, how you can't do that, right? You can't just eat one.
Yeah, they bragged about it, right? And I think actually TikTok brags about this as well. It's like, hey, we have the highest user engagement of any social app that's out there. I think abstention is hard, right? It's the same thing with like cigarettes. It's a lot of smokers like went through this in the 90s when the smoking rates dropped. They're like, well, what if I just cut back on smoking to certain occasions? It doesn't work that way. You have to probably, with the more addictive behaviors, is if it's not really giving you a benefit, abstention is going to be the right way. We used to be afraid of talking about that, and I think now it's not taboo anymore. It used to be considered eccentric to say, just don't use that service. And you say, no, you have to use these services. This is like the new town square or whatever. And I think now people are much more open to a much wider variety of engagements with technology. They're much more open to the idea of like, hey, don't use TikTok, don't use Instagram Reels, get all social media off of your phone. That's not a crazy suggestion anymore.
What about reading? Go back to that. And partially because, like writing, it can be difficult. You have to sit and you have to throw yourself into something. What do we know about how much reading is enough to exercise our brain, for example?
Reading is the cognitive equivalent of something like jogging, right? It's hard. And you are going to feel some like resistance or discomfort, but not in an overwhelming sense. And it really gives us a lot of health on the other side. When we read, I think Marianne Wolf, the researcher here at UCLA, has done a really good job of trying to make accessible what happens in your brain. But basically, the short version is the more you read, the more your brain actually wires together different modules or segments of your brain that had different independent uses in our evolutionary past. It wires them together into this neuronal dance that can accomplish this goal of taking marks on a page and turning them into internal understanding. Now, once you've done that, you now have in your brain what she calls deep reading processes. It's a smarter brain. And you can now take these wired together different sections of your brain and turn them the other way to produce original thoughts, to produce original insights. So just like jogging means your cardiovascular health is going to go up, and now you're going to be able to do more physical activities that are more impressive, reading makes your ability to actually think smarter, more interesting thoughts. It improves it, and that then becomes useful in all aspects of your life.
Cal Newport, it's great to speak with you about this. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me.
Congolese have been massacred by white people in the Congo for years and years and years. And if the shoe is now on the other foot, only thing I can say is it's like chickens that always come back home to roost.
Do you personally feel, though, that there's some shame or involvement here or some guilt associated with the killing of other human beings?
I think that the white people should be ashamed of the deplorable situation that has been existing in the Congo, which is not the fault of the Congolese, but which is the result of instigation by European powers who are fighting each other over the mineral wealth of the Congo.
Take a look at the smartphone in your hand or the laptop sitting on your desk. Now, they are sleek, efficient, and feel completely disconnected from any kind of violence. But a major new investigation has revealed something alarming. Your electronic devices are likely linked to a brutal war in Africa. It all comes down to a dull, black mineral called coltan. When processed, it becomes tantalum, which is a crucial component in electronics, aerospace, defense, and medical equipment. Without it, our digital world stops. But in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the fight to control this mineral is destroying lives. The question is, who is buying the DRC's smuggled conflict coltan? An investigation by the Global Witness has come up with an answer to this. At the center of this crisis lies the DRC's Rubaya mines. Now, this major mining hub produces about 15% of the entire world's coltan. But Rubaya is not controlled by the Congolese government. It is run by the N23 rebels that the UN experts say are backed by neighboring Rwanda. Since taking complete control of the Rubaya mines, the M23 has turned the earth into a war chest. Since April of 2024, the rebels have generated revenue by taxing mining and trade. UN experts estimate that this single mining hub generates over $800,000 every single month for the rebels. That is nearly $1 million a month used to fuel an insurgency marked by horrific human rights abuses. But how does a mineral dug out of a rebel-held war zone end up inside a tech factory halfway across the world? The Global Witness investigation has revealed an incredibly sophisticated laundering system. It is a 4-step chain of events that successfully hides the blood on these minerals before they reach global markets. Step 1 is smuggling. Once the coltan is dug out of the Rubaya pits under M23 control, it is smuggled across the border into neighboring Rwanda through the border city of Goma. Step 2 is the mix. Once in Rwanda, coltan is mixed directly with Rwanda's own locally mined minerals. It is officially tagged and labeled as Rwandan coltan. Step 3 is international export. 5 of Rwanda's largest mineral exporting companies are allegedly buying this conflict-tainted coltan and shipping it to massive processing plants, mostly in China and Kazakhstan, where coltan is finally processed and turned into tantalum. Then the conflict minerals are allegedly used to manufacture parts that are sold directly to the world's leading brands.
We found that conflict coltan may have unwittingly found its way to global brands including Microsoft, Vodafone, Sony, Amazon, Nvidia, LG Display, Ericsson, Toyota, and Apple, and into products we use every day.
Now, what does that massive influx of cash actually buy for the M23 rebels? A new report from Human Rights Watch reveals exactly how the M23 is using its power and wealth to terrorize the population. This conflict is financing not just buying weapons, but it is being used to build a forced army. Human Rights Watch has documented that the M23, with direct support from the Rwandan military, has forcibly recruited and detained thousands of people in eastern DRC. The money generated from the Rubaya coltan mines is directly paying for the logistics, the trucks, and the weapons used to round up these thousands of people, forcing them onto the front lines of a war they don't want to be a part of. Now this brings us to what lies ahead. Conflict financing is a big threat to peace in Central Africa. The wealth from Rubaya makes the M23 entirely self-sustaining. It gives them the financial power to ignore peace treaties, outgun local forces, and violently abuse human rights with absolute impunity. While global brands claim their supply chains are clean, international tracking systems are reportedly failing. Until the world forces true accountability on where these minerals come from, the cost of our digital lives will continue to be paid in human lives. Now, for more on this, we have with us Patrick Bond, who is a political economist and distinguished professor at the University of Johannesburg. He is joining us live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Welcome to First Post Africa, Patrick.
Oh, thanks very much. It's great to be back with you.
Now, to start, what are your comments on this latest report that has revealed the journey of the conflict coltan from the DRC into the global supply chains?
It didn't surprise me and probably others who keep an eye on this part of the world. It's a tragic situation, and the contestation goes back at least 30 years, and it's a contestation over what we would call a global value chains. And there have been many such reports, and there's been, for example, Human Rights Watch's 2005 investigation that showed some of the warlords that were responsible for deaths that many would number in the millions, maybe up to 6 million deaths in the eastern DRC over resources. And Anglo-American, Anglo-Gold Ashanti to be precise, and its leader at the time, Bobby Godsell, were caught by Human Rights Watch. He did apologize, but, you know, this is when you've got basically the biggest company in Africa doing that. And then Glencore is very active with a man called Dan Gertler, who's an Israeli, and they've been in, again, the same part of the eastern DRC. The U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, before Donald Trump basically neutered it last year, was important in putting some fines onto Glencore for bribing Congolese officers. So we've had these for quite a while. I think what's new and maybe more difficult in the period since especially 2010 is how many Chinese mines have been able to start up operations, and along with the sort of blood coltan, the blood cobalt, and some of the other minerals, we're also seeing child labor, and it's very, very poorly paid. And the profits then, instead of going via Rwanda to China and staying there, Foxconn, the big phone company, is actually getting some profits, but most of it actually still goes back in this global value chain to Cupertino, California, where Apple is headquartered. And that's the greatest tragedy of all. It's really imperialist Western big tech that needs this, and a sub-imperial Chinese ecosystem of corporates and minds that really are appallingly exploitative.
Right. And with the M23 rebels making over $800,000 a month from the Rabaya mines, they seem completely self-sustaining. Are diplomatic peace treaties effectively useless as long as this financial pipeline through Rwanda remains open?
Well, they needn't be, and we've had problems of blood minerals, blood diamonds in West Africa that were partially solved with a Kimberley process, although there's huge flaws with that. But basically consumer awareness, that you can see the fingerprints of those Congolese children or the super exploited workers in China in the Hoku system. In some of those Foxconn plants, they had a terrible situation of workers committing suicide in Foxconn. So consumers began to become more aware. And indeed, the Congolese government sued some of the majors like Apple and other companies in the French and Belgian courts a couple of years ago, precisely because there is such a difficult situation of getting justice in the DRC. So I think we all have to be aware of those opportunities to question the global value chains. I would also say that the political or geopolitical manipulation has been awful, because even South Africa put an army of a couple of thousand men into, and a few women into the eastern DRC in 2024. They've had occasional peacekeeping troop really consistently since the early 2000s. But when you have a lot of South African firms here in Johannesburg that are very implicated, not just Anglo-American, but Kulabusi Zuma, the nephew of the former president and the president's lawyer, that's Jacob Zuma's lawyer, were very involved in one of these oil deals a little bit further up. And then you've also got the likes of the Moseneke brothers, very important political elites. Patrice Motsepe, the major black economic empowerment investor, has a huge copper mine in the area. And so when you've got Johannesburg, capital, and Pretoria, sub-imperial military active in the eastern DRC, we do have to actually ask the question you did. Can any peacemaking process work? And now that Marco Rubio and Donald Trump and, they're looking for $4 trillion and hoping to take minerals, rare earth minerals and other valuable minerals out through Lobito, through Angola, it becomes even more complicated because they have no interest in peace, do they?
Right. And how can global tech brands like Amazon, Apple, and NVIDIA honestly guarantee to consumers that their products are conflict-free amid reports like this?
Well, I think it really is now up to Xi Jinping. He's the one with the power and motive to be seen as running a cleaner capitalist system than the West. And it's just not the case at the moment, partly because of the extent to which Chinese firms are unregulated, and they are it's not just capitalists, but there are state firms associated with this process, and they don't seem to have much, let's say, loyalty to taking minerals from Eastern DRC and bringing them through Kinshasa and being taxed. And to me, it would be quite possibly an important time now, especially because China will host the BRICS next year, and there are countries in the region like Uganda, which is now a partner of the BRICS, Nigeria, which is the other major coltan exporter, that is also a partner of the BRICS. So it's maybe time, South Africa, an original BRICS member, to actually ask for this institution to start regulating its corporations, especially when they're absolutely destructive in Africa.
Dude, you scared the shit out of me. I mean, we say it's contamination. I mean, I'm thinking like an Ebola leak or something.
Ebola?
Yeah, it's a disease on the Discovery Channel where all your intestines sort of just slip right out of your butt.
Thank you. I know what Ebola is.
And moving on, let's turn our attention to the Ebola outbreak in Central Africa. The death toll is rising. The DRC has reported over 500 confirmed cases and over 90 deaths. Its neighbor Uganda has recorded 19 cases and 2 deaths. Authorities are racing against time to contain the spread of the deadly virus. The latest outbreak has forced the world to look closer at the hidden environmental cost of today's modern digital lifestyle. While we often view these viral outbreaks as isolated natural disasters, researchers are pointing to a much different catalyst. Now, the global hunger for gold and tech minerals like lithium, coltan, and cobalt, and this hunger is seemingly insatiable, for which humans are invading the natural world. And researchers say that the latest Ebola crisis is the direct repercussion of distributing the ecosystem. And let's take a look at the epicenter of the outbreak, and that is the Democratic Republic of Congo. It is the world's top producer of cobalt and Africa's largest producer of copper. Now, the DRC's mineral reserves are worth nearly $24 trillion, and most of this wealth remains untapped. Now, the country also has 60% of the world's second largest rainforest deep within the Congo Basin. Bats are known to naturally carry the Ebola virus, and while not getting affected by it. Now, researchers say that in an untouched ecosystem, these animals remain isolated. But as global industries push deeper into the wilderness to extract resources, that natural barrier is being stripped away. Last year, the Trump administration also signed a minerals deal with the DRC in exchange for security. Washington aims to capitalize on the minerals in the country's conflict-hit east. Now, when mining operators tear down vast tracts of rainforest, they destroy the animals' natural habitats. Displaced and stressed, these bat populations are reportedly forced into closer proximity to humans. And this isn't a slow expansion from the edges of a city. Mining slices right into the heart of these jungles. Driven by record-high gold prices, makeshift mining settlements are popping up almost overnight. In the DRC, there are nearly 2 million people who earn their livelihoods out of artisanal mining. Now, the town of Mongwabulu in the DRC's Ituri, where the Ebola outbreak took hold, saw massive deforestation just over the past year as mining accelerated. Mongwalu has many unregulated gold mining areas, and thousands of workers have rushed into these remote camps looking for economic opportunities. They are living in crowded conditions with limited clean water or medical facilities. When workers hunt forest animals for food or encounter displaced wildlife, it creates the perfect environment for animal-to-human viral transmission. And because these mining sites are busy trading hubs, a virus that starts in a remote pit can rapidly travel along supply routes to major cities, especially in the DRC.
Contact tracing in the DRC is not yet where it needs to be. Only about 45% of contacts have been followed up. And to get ahead of the outbreak, we need to get that number up to above 90%. Insecurity, displacement, and mobile populations make contact tracing especially difficult.
This brings the issue directly to our own doorsteps. The minerals extracted from these specific regions, like tin, tungsten, tantalum, and gold, are the foundational materials for the consumer electronics that we rely on every day, from medical equipment to laptops and smartphones. Public health experts are warning that treating patients after they get sick is no longer enough. To prevent the next global health crisis, authorities have to look at the ecological destruction driving it. The intense pressure to supply the global tech industry is fundamentally altering ecosystems and pulling dangerous viruses out of the wild. It is a stark reminder that our global supply chains are interconnected, and the choices made to power our digital world can have life or death consequences thousands of miles away.
Welcome to the biggest World Cup in history. In 2026, 48 teams will take part for the first time, bringing more matches, new opponents, and a completely revamped knockout bracket. The tournament is shared between 3 countries, the United States, Canada, and Mexico, turning North America into a single stage for national teams from all over the world.
We may have mentioned it before in this podcast, just a few times. We are mere days away from the start of the Football World Cup. It is massively exciting for football fans everywhere. But whilst it's the players that get all the attention, the tournament also brings together some of the best referees and officials there are. But one of them won't be there. The Somalian Omar Artan, regarded as one of Africa's leading football refs, has been denied entry to the US despite having valid paperwork. The head of America's World Cup task force, Andrew Giuliani, said he supported the decision by the US border authorities.
There were some very terrible people that he was talking to. What I can tell you is it was the right decision by Customs and Border Patrol, and I support that decision. While we want players, we want coaches, we want referees to come here to the World Cup, we also want to make sure that we're not going to allow a soccer tournament to be the opportunity for terrorists to potentially get in the country or anybody who's actually talking to them.
So do we know the details of why exactly the US turned him away? It's a question I put to BBC Sports' Manny Jasmi.
They haven't given any details, but FIFA, World Football's governing body, have confirmed the decision and have said that ultimately it's down to the host country who gets a visa. There was equally no information on Saturday when one of Iraq's players, Ayman Hussein, was detained at Chicago Airport for 7 hours before being allowed to rejoin his teammates after they all landed in the country. But Iraq's official photographer wasn't allowed, so he was also turned back at the gate without any official reason given.
Safe to say we've not seen a World Cup like this before, have we?
No.
You've got to be really into football to have a favourite ref, I think. But for those who do, well, Omar Artan is considered the best of the best, is he?
Well, you either have to be really into football or really naive about football to have a favourite referee, I would say. But Omar Artan, he's the current African Referee of the Year, which is the award that he received in 2025 from the body that runs African football. He's a top referee, maybe the best one from Africa, and he was all set to become the first Somalian official to take part and officiate in any World Cup. But all of those hopes have been dashed by his repatriation, and we believe he's back in Turkey, where he's spent the last few months.
As we've seen, though, it's not just refs and players and even team officials having problems. There's been some quite incredible stories of fans spending a fortune on tickets only to not be allowed into the US.
Yes, I read a piece about an Iraqi fan who spent a fortune just to get to Jordan from Iraq to have his face-to-face interview as he applied for a visa and didn't get it. There are so many countries that are on this US banned list. Iran and Haiti, no one from those countries can go, and anyone from Ivory Coast and Senegal are subjected to restrictions. It's very difficult for fans to follow their teams.
And very quickly, it's just one of the kind of problems overshadowing the start of this, isn't there? We've had other ticket problems, we've had water bottles, there's been all sorts.
And no one's kicked a ball yet. This suggests that in the next 5 or 6 weeks, there may be other talking points away from football.
Manny Jasmi.
One game like the Knicks build you up just to lose the championship.
Basketball fans will have their eyes on New York's Madison Square Garden tonight, where Game 4 of the NBA Finals between the New York Knicks and the San Antonio Spurs will take place. President Trump's presence at Game 3 on Monday night brought attention to the billionaire owner of Madison Square Garden and the New York Knicks, James Dolan, who invited President Trump to watch the game from his box. This was Trump speaking to reporters last week about the Knicks and Dolan.
Well, I've been a Knicks fan for a long time, and I'm also a Jim Dolan fan. He's a nice guy, okay? He's been a long time wanting to win, and he's a competitive guy, and he's got a team that's amazing. The answer is yes, he's invited me, I'm going.
Well, tonight the world's attention might be on Madison Square Garden, but owner James Dolan will also be likely paying attention to everyone who's coming to the stadium, specifically watching them. For years, the stadium's been notorious for using facial recognition technology to monitor everyone entering the venue. A few years ago, Dolan defended his use of facial recognition technology at Madison Square Garden, speaking to Fox 5 New York's Good Day New York.
First off, it's funny what people think about facial recognition, right? When you get caught on a camera, which is basically anytime you go in the public, you're on camera, right? I mean, you walk down the street, believe me, you're on the camera like you're on 10 cameras. What facial recognition does is looks at your, recognizes your face and says, are you, right, someone who's on this list, right? So if you're a terrorist, right, it will say, that's a terrorist, right? And then, appropriate action can be taken. It's very, very useful for security. In fact, Madison Square Garden, I believe, is the most secure venue in the country.
Well, a detailed investigation by Wired magazine reveals just how extensive the surveillance machine that Dolan has set up at Madison Square Garden. It's called The Shocking Secrets of Madison Square Garden Surveillance Machine by Noah Shachtman and Robert Silverman. Noah Shachtman's latest piece is headlined, "A New York Cop Got Injured at a Boxing Match. Now Madison Square Garden is banning his lawyer." For more, we're joined by Wired's contributing editor, Noah Shachtman. Thanks so much for being with us. So talk about this surveillance machine. As James Dolan, the Trump ally who invited Trump to sit with him in his box for Game 3, talk about him referring to tracking terrorists.
Yeah. So, look, every sports venue is going to have security measures, of course, and many of those may involve facial recognition. But no venue in the country deploys facial recognition so widely and so and weaponizes it in the way that James Dolan does. He uses facial recognition not just to keep suspected troublemakers out, but more importantly, he has all sorts of enemies lists. And those enemies include people that he might be in legal disputes with, people that might have tweeted mean stuff at him. And in our story for Wired, maybe the most shocking thing was there's a trans woman who, for the crime of being trans, was surveilled by James Dolan's spy machine second by second, minute by minute, even when she went into the bathroom, when she came out, because James Dolan didn't want her close to the team.
How did he know about her?
This was a person, we're calling her for her own privacy, Nina Richards. And this is a person that was a familiar face at Madison Square Garden, that knew many of the staff, that knew many of the players, season ticket holder, and had been around the team. And we got a hold of a surveillance report from Pride Night a couple of years ago, where this woman wanted to enjoy the game and had pretty decent seats and, got a drink like everybody else and got some hot dogs like everybody else and even got escorted to an even better seat, which does happen from time to time if you hang around the Garden. And second by second, every single place she went, she was surveilled, and that was captured in a detailed report that we obtained.
What did she do about this?
Well, that part we don't know entirely. We know there was some kind of legal dispute, and we know that she was eventually banned from the Garden and is no longer allowed to be there. So it's one of many outcomes that happens with Dolan's spy machine. Some people are banned. Some people are merely put on a watch list and surveilled. Some people are given warnings. But to me, the more shocking thing is not just what happens inside the Garden, but that around the Garden and even in the greater New York area, Madison Square Garden security forces have assigned themselves the task of policing these areas and acting as a kind of second ersatz police force in Midtown Manhattan. To me, most shockingly, is that when there are protests going through Midtown, for example, pro-Gaza protests, Madison Square Garden security staffers, according to a lawsuit that was recently filed, are basically told to surveil those protests and to embed, and one former security officer said he was ordered to embed inside those protests in order to do intelligence work.
Wait. Talk about Dole's head of security, John Eversole, who had his team cosplay as cops patrolling the neighborhood to spy on protesters?
Yeah. When I mean cosplay, I mean act as if they were cops, not actually put on cop uniforms. But yeah, they would go and they would bust, what they deemed to be bad merch sellers. They would bust what they thought were ticket scalpers or just clean up the neighborhood. And they employ a lot of ex-cops in order to do that, one of whom actually had to be hospitalized after his work for the garden. So no, it's incredibly serious and it's incredibly strange. They police the neighborhood without any coordination with the NYPD.
New York cop got injured at a boxing match. Now Madison Square Garden is banning his lawyer.
Yeah, that's right. So it's pretty common throughout the city here for cops to earn some extra money by working for private corporations. There's in fact an NYPD program where you can hire cops through the NYPD to do some extra work. There was the guy that unfortunately got killed, Officer Islam, who got killed at the NFL headquarters maybe a year ago on such work. Anyway, this guy was working a boxing match. The rapper Lil TJ and his crew were there, got involved in an altercation. This cop says he suffered spinal injuries and wanted some payback for his, hospital bills. His lawyer is a guy named John Scola, who's a famous lawyer in New York who covers a lot of cops when they're suing their bosses. Anyway, they filed a lawsuit, something that happens all the time, and MSG banned him for the crime of doing his job.
Now, the blacklist goes beyond MSG, right? The blacklist made by using the facial recognition extend to other MSG-operated entities like Radio City Music Hall.
Like Radio City Music Hall, like the Beacon Theater, and like the Sphere in Las Vegas, that incredibly popular high-tech venue. In fact, we got screenshots from the surveillance system that showed a little girl, I can't believe she would have been any more than 8 or 10 years old, that had been captured by the Sphere's surveillance machine and had been labeled a priority 8, the highest priority threat in the area. So this doesn't just capture enemies of Dolan, it captures everyone. And some people get labeled as threats even when they're clearly not. They're little girls.
Well, we're going to encourage people to read this as some watch the game. Who's watching you, especially those who can afford to go to MSG and watch the playoffs of the NBA? Noah Shackman is a contributing editor at Wired. We'll link to your pieces, The Shocking Secrets of Madison Square Garden's Surveillance Machine, and a New York cop got injured at a boxing match. Now Madison Square Garden is banning his lawyer.
The Watcher, the Watcher, the Watcher, the Watcher.
A former Milwaukee police officer pled guilty to using the flock camera system. It looks at license plates and tracks vehicles throughout the area. Police say he used it to track a romantic partner and friend. Investigative reporter James Stratton live at the courthouse for us tonight. James, the officer admitted to tracking two people hundreds of times.
And Derek, court records show the officer used the department's flock safety database, those license plate reader cameras that you see on the side of the road, to find their whereabouts, searching a former romantic partner and that person's romantic partner 179 times, today pleading guilty to that single misdemeanor count of attempted misuse in public office.
It started with a simple search of a public website, haveibeenflocked.com, that ended in criminal charges for a Milwaukee police officer. A former colleague and girlfriend of Officer Josue Ayala discovered he'd searched their license plates, checking their whereabouts 179 times last spring. The reason?
Mr. Ayala, what was the purpose of searching in the flock safety system?
Unanswered by Ayala minutes after pleading guilty to attempted misconduct in public office Thursday.
How do you wish to plead?
Guilty. Ayala agreed to resign from the Milwaukee Police Department after 8 years on the force. Prosecutors say they'll recommend a fine as punishment instead of jail time or probation. New court records reveal a judge also granted a temporary restraining order for what appears to be the two victims in the case. One saying the searches were long after they broke up, saying, quote, "I had absolutely no idea he continued watching my every move. When I became aware of this, I was horrified, disgusted, embarrassed, and terrified. However, I was not surprised." The other saying, "When Ayala was using the flock system repeatedly to stalk me via MPD resources, I feared for my safety." Ayala showing no emotion and answering no questions from reporters after pleading guilty Thursday.
And James, other officers also went under investigation for potential misuse of this flock camera system.
And Derek, this investigation created an internal investigation in Milwaukee Police that then was forwarded to the Milwaukee County District Attorneys. We've also requested any of that from that case or others in the department. Denial for those records requests say they forwarded 2 cases to the Milwaukee County District Attorney's Office. Unclear if Ayala is the other case in that. He's set for a sentencing here in July in the Milwaukee County Courthouse.
Investigative reporter James Stratton for us tonight at the Milwaukee County Courthouse. So what is FLOC? It is a license plate reading system and uses cameras in fixed locations to photograph and record license plate information from vehicles as they're traveling. Milwaukee has 33 FLOC cameras installed across the city, and they've used the cameras since 2022. Police Chief Jeffrey Norman says the department has trimmed its number of officers who have access to the system and added more audits and safeguards to that camera network.
We are in a war. See, this is not, see, we always think like this is a school ground. See, we never get beyond the 10th grade with this type of thing. And we always lose when we take those positions. We handle it the same way we would handle it, say, in the 7th grade. And it's not at that level at all. This is total dynamite. That's the way you look at it. This is war, W-A-R, complete devastation. And I look up and I see who's present and see which way everything is going. Get out of the line of fire. Get out of the volatility. No contact, no conflict. Don't go toward the conflict. That's the bait. Somebody yelling nigger from across the road and all like that. Hey. Oh, wow. Okay. Hey. Get that key in the ignition. Let's move out of here. The last report that anybody gets is that you were trying to get away from the situation, that you did not instigate. If truth be told, that's how you want it told. Not going toward it. What's that you said to me? No. See, that black people got to get out of that ghetto mentality because we lose every time.
Karmelo Anthony's family is also talking tonight. They believe the trial was unfair from the start. They do plan to appeal. Our Ken Molestina to continue now our team coverage.
A day after the trial, Karmelo Anthony's parents, Andrew Anthony and Kayla Hayes, sat down to break their silence and to let the world know how they're feeling as their son begins his 35-year sentence for murder. Despite what a jury found, his parents dispute their son ever wanted to kill Austin Metcalf.
My son is no murderer. My son didn't intend to hurt anyone. My son was defending himself. And that's what hurt so bad.
His mother recounts the moment she addressed the jury and made her plea to them during the sentencing phase.
To have mercy on my son. That's what I told the jury. I know they had their minds made up already, so, I mean, really wasn't much I could say to change their mind.
Both parents fighting back emotions and tears as they described what they believe was a flawed trial.
We were delusional. We thought we was going to get a fair shake.
They claim there were inconsistencies from the get-go, despite witnesses who took an oath vowing to tell the truth.
Everyone actually lied on the stand.
Everyone.
All of the witnesses' statements were inconsistent. All of them.
His father says the court of public opinion had made up their mind about his son long before the trial began.
He was convicted when he walked out of the jail. If you looked at the news, all that shit, he was already convicted. If you look at it, it was already done. It was no innocent until proven guilty. He was already guilty.
He says the threats of violence against them continue.
People want us dead. That's what
After they still got what they wanted.
After they still got what they want, they still want us dead. I can see, you see, I go look at my phone, people want us dead. They want our family dead.
And now they're preparing to appeal.
They did a number on us.
A judicial process they believe wronged them.
We didn't get justice. A lot of things that were missed that should have been handled a certain way. However, we couldn't say anything. We did what was instructed. We was told, so we just did what we was told.
Ken Molestina, CBS News, Texas.
This the city of Chicago.
Let's head to Chicago, where some people were shocked to see a cross burning in a public park just yesterday. And at this point, police don't have anyone in custody. Let's go live now to CBS News correspondent Chanel Call. And Chanel, what can you tell us about this video?
Well, the video here is frankly quite wild and disturbing. Just imagine walking or driving by this park in Chicago yesterday afternoon at about 2:30 p.m. in broad daylight. You can see this video. This is what this looked like. There was a cross that was burning. You can see the flames in the video on your screen right now. And a lot of people who saw this play out were shocked and disturbed by what they were looking at. Take a listen.
It's very hurting because it's just like, even in schools, they make it seem like things like that were so long ago and we're making so much progress, and we're clearly not. There is no progress because it's clearly happening to this day in broad daylight.
And Mugo, Chicago police are now investigating this incident that happened at that Chicago park yesterday afternoon. At this point, they have not said whether they have a suspect, no information on who they believe may have been responsible for this or what the motive for this may have been. But obviously this is concerning. It comes at a time in which we're seeing rising political and religious violence in this country.
Yeah, hopefully we get some answers soon on that one. Chanel Call, thank you so much.
Clearly not making progress. Very rare to hear someone say something like that. Wow. Does she listen to the cows, you think? I guess for context, it might be a little less surprising to hear someone make such a frank, candid, logical assessment when there's a smoldering cross in Chicago. And dig this, in Chicago, context. A smoldering cross in Chicago days before Juneteenth, which Gus T does not celebrate, and just on the opening of the Obama Library in Chicago, which has been a big deal. I know for some people they may say that sort of thing is not a big deal, but hey, Gus T did write about the Obama Library way back in 2015 when they started talking about making this facility in Chicago. I even interviewed Pam about this as well. I have to post a link to that report, but they've been talking about this for a long time and making a big deal about this whole, facility being built and how it's going to impact the black people that are there and all the rest of it. And now they got the whole project done and everything. Some people said it would have been better to have a hospital for the black people, all the black culture and black love in Chicago, that it would have been better to have a trauma center. But they got the Obama Center. Anyway, but I think that is important context for this cross being burned. Days from Juneteenth, Obama Center just opened. Maybe even you add in the recent passing of Jesse Jackson if we're being Chicago specific. Context. The worthless Negra from Virginia, that Negra in the alley, Gus T in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, June 13, 2026. So I have been told. I can say, since I spent a lot of time bragging about Seattle over the years, this is one moment in time where I'm not in love with Seattle. Not even close. Like, man, lamest of the lame time to be in Seattle. Why would that be? Well, this week alone, So you have graduation at UW. UW is a mammoth campus, like 60,000 plus. So their graduation kind of shuts down that whole side of town, and they go to the football stadium and just, man, trying to avoid all of that. And then they party and the shenanigans and drunken debauchery and just, you have to avoid that whole region. But that's 60,000 people. You know, this whole towns that are that size, right? So that's one. We got Pride Month, which is a mammoth deal in Seattle. They're about to have all the big parades and parties, and that's a whole different section of town that gets shut down. That's about to come up, where they do the whole big every day and shut down Broadway and anti-sex everywhere. And oh man, that's already building. That's already, got that rolling. Summertime anyway, just because it's Seattle, they do have the Mariners professional baseball team, and so they have, I think with baseball it's 160 games or whatever it is. So that's like a good solid 80 games, many of them at night. Drunken debauchery all out downtown, even in excess of what it normally would be. I don't keep up with the white ball games, so anytime you could stumble out and, oh my God, drunken cloud, oh, the darn Mariners. And Seattle is a World Cup city, so we have all of that madness and the games, and that's a whole nother chunk of town that you have to avoid for the next 2-3. Oh man, it is just wow. Not feeling Seattle. Just lots of big chunks of the city that you have to avoid. That's what it is for like the next month. You have to get past July 4, and then we'll see what it looks like. 2 thumbs down. You pray for Gus T as he tries to hide out over the next 2-3 weeks. That's it. Before we get to the news reports, we did hear about Milwaukee in the audio segments. Gus T was in Milwaukee this time last year for the murder trial of Sade C. Robinson. What an experience. I will not forget. I think we were still in the middle of the trial this time last year. Or nope, it had just ended. So at this point, I was just doing other research in Milwaukee and getting ready to go for the Jeffrey Dahmer tour, all that goofiness. But woo, I learned not as plentiful as my research trip in California, but woo, I did learn a lot in Milwaukee. Sade C. Robinson. Much obliged to all our investors who helped Gus T get out there, some way more helpful than others, but man, that was hopefully a constructive experience and in the archives. That's it. Invest if you think the cows is constructive. Hit the blog, racism-notes.blogspot.com, racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button in the top right corner. Beneath the button, you'll see the links for Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal. Enormous gratitude to all of the investors who have kept the cows on the air for 17 years. Hopefully, we have been worthy of your time and energy. More often than not, hopefully, we have been accurate. Stay tuned. We'll report for programs for this coming week, especially if Gus T is able to remain safe throughout these turbulent times here in Seattle. If Gus T can kind of keep it safe, especially for this week, just keep it safe. No kerfuffles, no conflicts, get any brawls at any track meets. Get up and see what constructive information we can learn this week. Wow. Gus T might have to do a midweek report just to give an update about what constructive information we have gathered in 2026. So just stay tuned. I will update. You can check social media and such for posts. That's it. Some of the reports that we heard. Privileged black male, 3-time NBA champion Stacey King teammate of Michael Jordan on the Chicago Bulls, died at the age of 59. Didn't even make it to 60. Now, I guess, Chadwick Boseman, D'Angelo, Rob Bass, I guess they might say, hey, 59, you're pretty good. How you do that, 59? How you do that, Stacy? That's your black male privilege, because that's what they said. You black males privileged, like Gus T. You're privileged. You're chasing white women. You're privileged. You play the basketball, the bouncy bounce. You get all the money. You leave all the black females. That's what you do. You're privileged. And die at 59. I mean, you can't get much more privileged than winning 3 NBA championships and playing with Michael Jordan. It can't be much more privileged. And even after he passed away, he went and got a job with the Bulls, Chicago Bulls, and did color commentary. So it's not like, he had a short playing career and lost all his money and was broke and shiftless in an alley sipping a bottle of wine. Great career, teammates with Michael Jordan, continued to work for the same organization even after he retired, making good money, still on television, beloved by all, dead at 59. I will say, I saw they had pictures and everything because he was a media personality, and they had photographs of Mr. King, black male, and at 59 now. This is not, Mr. Fuller, I guess for context, lived to 96. You'll see lots of people that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s. Michael Jordan is in his 60s, and he's still out talking and doing all that kind of thing. But he was 59, Stacey King. The pictures, I said, whoa. I don't know if people are familiar, if you're a grouchy and grumpy old fella, but if you remember or have heard of the Refrigerator Perry, another privileged black male, but he used to play football. He's rumored to have weighed about 400 pounds, which cannot be healthy at all. That's why they called him the Refrig. But he played for the Chicago Bears. They put up a picture of Stacey King, like more current photo, not from his playing days. He reminded me of Refrigerator Perry. I said, whoa, Stacey King played basketball. Why does he look like he could be approaching 400 pounds? He played basketball. That's for people who run up and down the court. You're supposed to do sprints and be lean. And I mean, what? How do you weigh 400 pounds? And he's dead at 59. Man, and even the people that I mentioned before, D'Angelo, Chadwick Boseman, gastrointestinal cancers. Now, I don't know what the cause of death for Mr. King was. I'm sure they'll announce at some point. When I find out, I'll share. But a lot of this, number one, is the system of white supremacy racism. 2, because of that, we have some of the worst eating habits, some of the worst nutrition and health habits in general. But wow, race soldiers, they annihilate us with the food. Absolutely annihilate us. And even if it's bad enough to have, the D'Angelos and Chadwick Bosemans and Stacey King and Rob Bass, it's bad enough. But even if you are here, I keep saying, they do not want no Neely Fuller Jr. They don't want you here at 96 where you are sharp. Your mental faculties are functioning well. If you don't have Mr. Fuller canceling speaking engagements every other week, oh man, my diabetes acting up. This, that, even into his 90s. Sounding good, talking, voice strong, even editing his book and such in his 80s. That is not what they want. They want us struggling. In your 20s and 30s, struggling on medication. Oh, my Lord, my hypertension at 38, my heart medication at 39. Oh, my goodness, on dialysis machine at 40. I'm not, disparaging anyone in that shape, but that's what racists want. And out of here at 59. Or even if you're going to be here at 59, you're not going to be what they call it, virile. Not going to have, what's that other V word? Vitality. They want you struggling. Difficulties. Barely making it. They know you won't have the energy to replace white supremacy with justice. Got to get that medication straight. Probably go, get the doctor's visit. Dialysis machine. Lots of other priorities. Condolences to Stacy, 59. He had children too. He had children 4, unless I'm misinformed. 59. We heard the report, the passing of Dr. Robert Coles, who worked with young Ruby Bridges when she was trying to so-called integrate schools in Louisiana. And she talked about talking about a young black girl who is, I believe she was 6, Ruby Bridges, going to school, and a mob of 200 racist white terrorists, where she could have been killed. I mean, the environment and time that we're talking about, Ruby Bridges could have been killed easily. 200 race soldiers show up at the crack of dawn. We'll kill you. What sort of impact does that have on you as a black? I mean, what sort of training do they give you as a 6-year-old? What do they tell you? You think you had nightmares because of something you saw on television. Jesus Christ, what sort of nightmares do you get from that? Oof. Dr. Cole, Children of Crisis, I'd never heard of that one before. That would be another. Reading is more important than watching television. That would be one I would say folks in Louisiana maybe give a gander. Might be important information to know. It's even reminded me of Elizabeth Eckford, who we did read about up in Arkansas, but having a whole gang of race soldiers out to scream and yell at you just trying to learn how to read. They had the report, I've been slack, forgive, right here in Seattle, the so-called transgender student Juniper Blessing. She was killed by, I suspect, this is a black dude. I have to get the exact information, but from the reports that I've seen and pictures that I've seen and other articles that they have talking about this, I think Christopher Leahy is a black male, privileged, who is charged, accused of killing transgender white student, University of Washington student Juniper Blessing. Oh, man. They have wigged out about this incident. Now, I mean, hey, generally, if you have a student at a major college, it's 60,000 student body, there is going to be a response. But, oh, man, a transgender white student killed by a black dude. Oh, man. In fact, it is so palpable in terms of, in terms of constructive about this is that it happened very close to the end of the quarter. They're on the quarter system here at the University of Washington, and literally the last day of the academic year was yesterday, Friday, June 12th. So none of this has been adjudicated or anything. School year is done. People are graduating, moved on. People will transfer and all of that. So it'll be a new year. I'm sure they will be talking about all of this and everything, but wow, if this had happened at like the beginning of the year, yeah, I mean, when I say it is like palpable, as soon as you step on campus, and I meant to say something about this for the past couple of weeks, because as soon as you step on campus, they have murals. I wanted to take pictures too, but I just sidetracked, and every time or when I would not be sidetracked, when I'd be like, oh yeah, I can go do pictures, I would wait and it would be dark, which is some feat because it's not dark that often here in the summertime in Seattle this time of year, but timing has been that bad. I would wait and it would be dark. And then once it's light, I wouldn't walk by it, or it wouldn't even be in my frame of mind. But they have murals, chalkings, little random spots that they have just made around campus as little pop-up shrines to Juniper Blessing. Now, I mean, anyone who is killed unjustly, that totally incorrect, should not happen. Nothing correct about that at all. Fuller said, monsters and monstrosities. That's what Fuller said. But, oh man, they even had an article in the Seattle Times where it was a white University of Washington professor, and she was saying, dang, because for a while before they had the arrest, they just had all these images of this black dude up. You know, they got cameras all over Seattle and all over the University of Washington, even though this wasn't exactly on the UW campus. But they had pictures of this black dude up and all the Reddit. Any black dude at all. Gus T, you're a black dude. Yes, I'm a black dude. Any black dude at all. Be on the lookout. Like, wow, it was really palpable. And I even had to think, like, I have been here in Seattle for a long time. Hey, the Context of White Supremacy radio program was born literally at the University of Washington. We started on the University of Washington's Rainy Dog Radio, literally. Broadcasting from campus, literally. I can remember there have been other murders, shootings on campus. Even though this didn't happen on campus, there have been other shootings on campus. There have been other acts of violence on campus. I think there have been other... Foxy, Noxy, Amanda Knox. There have been lots of incidents with the University of Washington. I don't know. Like, I don't remember nothing like this. I had to go back and look, and it has been amazing. Like I said, they even had a white person writing an article in the Times talking about, wow, this is like, to be a black dude in this environment, it might be kind of stressful. You looking close. Was it you? You know him? That was your cousin? And it was a transgender person. You know how white people are real, especially, I just told you, they're having pride. They're already very aggressive about all that anti-sexual behavior, especially if it's seeming like you're a black person and you're not on board. So this is like the worst of the worst. Oof. I could even see this having ramifications moving forward. They already don't have very many black people on campus at the University of Washington. In particular, they don't have very many black dudes. Woo. I could see it having an impact moving forward, but I had been meaning to say something about that case and pictures and all the rest of it. Oh man, not a good time to be a black dude around the University of Washington campus, in my opinion. That's one I wish I had been able to talk to some of the black UW students, the handful of them that there are black male UW students, to see what they're thinking, what their experience has been around all this. Too late. School year's over. Let's see. The FDA or different companies where they can sneak all of these new chemicals, maybe poisons, into an edible product and sneak it by the Food and Drug Administration. That report, just for so many reasons, again, white people are annihilating us with this food. That right there, hey, to the best that you can, try to prepare your own foods, real foods, the Doritos and potato chips and candy bars and sodas. Now, she did say she was eating lentils, so it wasn't like she said she was going to get the Cheetos and potato chips and all the rest, Funyuns. She at least was stumbling and fumbling and trying to, get actual food. Lentils, I know what that is. You can get those. Okay, that's not exactly Frankenfoods. But once you are relying on, like I said, hey, let's try to minimize the opportunity for white people to put something in our mouth. Let's try to minimize the opportunity for racists to swango us. How do you do that? Make your own food. Now, hey, Gus T, I don't prepare my own food every single day. Especially, I think, in this environment, in this part of the world, I suspect there are probably not too many people who prepare all of their own food every day. That is at least one small thing that you can. And we've read, this is not something that you've never heard before. People that are way more intelligent than myself have talked about this for a long time, written about this. Harriet A. Washington would be one, for a myriad of reasons why. Prepare your own food. That's one. I just said Stacey King might still be with us if he did a little bit more preparing your own foods. That way you can control what is going in this. I know what all this stuff is. I don't have to worry about no crazy new ingredients that they done concocted or lied about or whatever. Prepare your own food. That right there is counter racism. I kept saying that at the retreats. I'm not saying you have to be a gourmet chef at all. You don't. But I mean, hey, it's not hard to compete if they're doing chemicals and all this stuff that's not even food. Like, man, that's not hard to beat in my opinion. Not at all. Make sure you don't burn it. Follow the instructions maybe. Remember to turn it off at the appropriate time. And hey, we at least in the ballpark. And we hopefully won't die. Won't lose your gallbladder in the process of all this, maybe. Prepare your own foods, take cooking classes, get a cookbook, find some YouTube channels. There's no excuse. We find anything else that we want that's non-constructive, that's goofy, that's about name calling or whatever else. You can, it's 2026. There should be no excuse to not being able to invest a little bit of time in making slightly more healthy foods to not kill us. That's counter racism right there. And even that segment when they spoke with, I suspect it could have been a white woman. I'm not sure. That was NPR audio. When they got the settlement for these contaminated lentils, I think she said she got $100,000 settlement compensation for all of this and having to have her gallbladder removed. She said she got a purse. I thought that kind of trivial. I mean, a purse? That's serious. Like, you have to have surgery and all this and a purse. Now, I mean, hey, she might have got a really nice purse. But I mean, and even if she did, like $100,000, like $100,000 purse, that almost seemed kind of like showing off. Like, I don't even know if you, in this environment, I would not encourage getting a $100,000 purse, wallet, whatever. Like, that's money that can be invested, for sure. Invest in your health in this sort of environment. Like, that can mean a lot of things, but sheesh, I would not get a $100,000 purse. I thought that kind of trivialized what I thought was really important. That all of this ends, you know, I had the surgery and I got a purse that's pretty dope. The end. The value system in a system of white supremacy racism. Let's see. Probably a purse made by some suspected racists. That would be my guess. That segment where they spoke with suspected racist Cal Newport about reading and our ability to focus. It reminded me so much of Dr. Welsing, who was so far ahead of her time. Again, that was her in 2013, talking about reading, the importance of reading, and people getting addicted to looking at their phones and losing the ability to look and see the world from a broad perspective and being focused and looking in a very shallow, narrow, niggardly manner, myopic focus, if you will. I thought that was so important, especially because so many black people, we don't read. White people are to blame, but that doesn't make it any better. We don't read. I thought that was so applicable to us, and particularly him talking about Mr. Newport, talking about how in this environment you have so much the digital Doritos, the TikTok and social media and all of this that's ultra refined, where you don't really do any serious, rigorous study. That's something that I've talked about for a long time, why I've said, hey, the people, us, that say non-white people, COWS listeners in total, non-white people in total, say we're working against racism, attempted counter-racist, where I just note that a lot of the times the content that we're sharing, it's just videos. It's just social media. That's it. Like, the totality of our research is, what did I watch on Netflix? What did I watch on YouTube? What did I find on IG? Like, that's, I don't mean, being serious, this is over years. I would say that's about 90%, maybe more, of the content that people send me, even when it is about a book. It's a social media post talking about the book. The person hasn't read it, and generally, and I'm saying it this way deliberately, 10 times out of 9, the person has not read the book that they are talking about. They heard someone or read about someone on social media discussing this here book. Maybe the author, someone else, maybe it's a podcast where they were doing an interview, whatever. But that's generally what it is. And most of the time it's not even that. It's just whatever nonsense that they watched on as a TikTok, YouTube, social media of whatever form. That's it. It's very rare. It's very rare that I even have people that will send a newspaper article. That's not something that's going to generally take days or weeks to read. Most of the time, that's going to be something that you could knock out in 15 minutes or less. Often 10 minutes or less. Nope. We do not read. Like I said, even the times that people mention books. I can just mention Pam because I mentioned her already, and this is not me disparaging the deceased. I told this to Pam. She acknowledged it repeatedly. So I'm just using her as an illustration, but it is widely applicable. Pam wrote books and quoted, Pamela Evans Harris wrote books, quoted Neely Fuller Jr., misquoted Neely Fuller Jr., and admitted that she had not read Mr. Fuller's book. That's what I'm saying, that is very widespread. We have so little attention, so little focus, so little academic rigor, even books that we say we want to read, sometimes even books that we quote inaccurately, even those books we don't read. That right there. Race soldiers have annihilated that. Now, if you think there are white people complaining about this, lack of attention, lack of focus, and I'm just on my cell phone all day long and click, and I can't pay attention to nothing else, man, it is way worse for people classified as black. I would say infinitely worse. They talked about reading and the importance of, with reading, this is something that you have to work at. This is not something that's natural and you just fall into it like, oh yeah, I just go read War and Peace in 1 hour and you have to, they compared it to running. Said it's just like any other exercise. To strengthen, you have to do it right. You don't just go in the gym and start bench pressing 600 pounds. You have to go in there and start small, start wherever you are and build up to it as you get stronger. It's the same thing with our brain computers. Might even say, hey, tuning in to the Catherine Massey Book Club, but we are there reliably every Friday. Read so we can work our brain computer. And they said it's the same thing. If you go to the gym and you do push-ups 5 days a week, you keep that up for a year, you will be substantially stronger by the time you get to the end of the year. Same thing with your brain computer. And they even say that there's research. You keep that up with that focus, you can pay better attention, you can focus, you can extrapolate that information and connect patterns between the data that you've seen. They said that it strengthens your brain to be a better problem solver across all situations. That is stunning. Just from reading. And again, this is reading long format, not just scrolling on your phone, but actually getting a book. Focusing. Just doing things really to strengthen the brain computer. And again, I just don't think, other than Dr. Welsing, limited, Dr. Cambon, limited few here and there, I just don't hear individuals classified as black talk about that sort of thing. I hear us brag about how smart we are about racism, which is obviously not true. Team Limp Noodle, that's what I say. The situation in the Congo where they talked about the conflict coltan reminded me of the conflict diamonds. Everything that is stolen, extracted from the continent is bloodied, got black blood stained on the diamonds and black blood on the MacBook from blood of Patrice Lumumba. That's the entire system of white supremacy racism. If we knew, where did this material come from, and that would be everything. I think we had our caller Henry in Chicago. He said they went to the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C., and they had the exhibit on slavery and sugar. Same thing. We got conflict sugar, conflict donuts, conflict rum. It's all system of white supremacy racism. Everything has been tainted with the blood of non-white people, victims of white supremacy. It would just be, how much do you know about this product? But the situation in the Congo, and that's what Minister Malcolm talking about, the death of assassination of Patrice Lumumba, to loot the mineral riches of the Congo. That's been going on for like ever, at least a good century or so. And even the child exploitation aspect of it, that's been going on. That's what the Congo is for. Loot, steal, rob, genocide against black people. Maybe occasionally we'll send Muhammad Ali to go have a fight there, maybe once 100 years or so. But that's about it. That's what the Congo is for. The segment about the Ebola virus, same thing, where they were saying that they think that, they didn't say white people, but disruption of the environment and bringing out these bats when they go to get all these minerals so we can get our iPhones and MacBooks and all the rest of it, that they're bringing out these bats that normally, I guess, people might not have contact with them, and these bats are the source of the Ebola. I said, dang, is that COVID again? Because I thought, now I know they got lots of, conspiracies and rumors and whatever about COVID-19, but in that jumble, that was one of the theories, that COVID-19 was bats and people eating the bats, and that's how we got the COVID-19. That was at least one of the suppositions. True or no, I do not know. But now we're back to that again with the bats and Ebola, and this time it's, if Whitey, our friend, wasn't going to do all this to get the coltan and all these other minerals in the Congo, we wouldn't have contact with these bats. Maybe there would not be Ebola. Now, maybe that's accurate. Maybe it's not. That's one of the theories about where this Ebola thing came from. But it seems like either way, it would still be Whitey is to blame. They threw China in there as well. But, I mean, Whitey is to blame. Talking about Africa and the World Cup, which is here, a part of it at least in Seattle. I'm going to have to look to see if anything wacky happens with a visitor while they're here in Seattle. It would not, or any of the cities, I guess, it would not surprise me if they had some sort of international incident with things lasting that long, and Seattle being such a wacky place for something to happen, plus them having to spend so much time downtown, like, ooh-wee. That'd be something I'd keep an eye on as well. But they had Omar Artan, the Somali referee who was banned from entering North America to participate in the World Cup. And I said, wasn't Somalia, wasn't that one of the areas that President Trump, when he was complaining and he was saying that all these non-white people coming to immigrate to the U.S. and we get all these dark people from these, he said, part of the language, but he said, shithole countries. Wasn't Somalia, wasn't that one of the places he was talking about? I know he had been talking bad about Haiti and any place where it's black people, like, send them back. But wasn't Somalia, wasn't that one of those regions? I said, we don't want these old terrorists. Get it. They banned Omar Artan from entering the U.S. They had the segment on the fake cameras being used in Madison Square Garden. Thankfully, I'll never have enough coins for that to be a problem that I would have to think about. That alone would be enough. Like, I know I would end up being on somebody's enemy list, and I would be super nervous about what they're going to do with my face being stored in their data banks, my biometrics being on file in their data banks for how long, and who else gets access to that. Like, I'm cool on all of that. I don't even like Jalen Brunson. I'm cool, no disrespect, but I'm cool on all of that. I even really, when I see the images and they show Spike Lee, who's been like a Knicks fan forever, I was like, didn't they just have that big kerfuffle where James Dolan, white man, racist suspect, was upset with Spike Lee and said, man, you didn't use the right door. You trying to be slick, come in through the private entrance like you own the place, and they got all angry with him and everything. And I was like, dang, Spike Lee is really, really famous, I thought. And Spike Lee has been spending like hundreds of thousands of dollars at these Knicks games, white ball games, for decades. Like, what in the world? Why doesn't he have like a valet escort to like a gold-plated seat in the front row of Madison Square Garden? What are you fussing at him about? Like he's Leroy Crackhead trying to sneak in. I was like, man, if I'm Spike Lee, I don't even know if I want to go back to support all of this. Like, what? I watch on TV. I'm good. Keep my money. I'm good. He said, Spike Lee himself said he has spent millions of dollars over his life on New York Knicks tickets. Man, he could have started a film school. 2 or 3 of them, maybe. But yeah, I felt some type of way about all of that. Glad I do not have the money. And that would even, man, maybe we should divest from these white ball games. We don't need to see the finals. We don't need to see Wemby. We don't need to be out there practicing the basketball and shooting, dribbling, all that other. You can have all of that. Replace white supremacy with justice. We have substantially more important priorities. Even that, with what they're doing at Madison Square Garden, New York, with Jose Ayala, that's the officer in Milwaukee who was convicted for misuse of the flock system, the cameras where they can track where people are. I think they use your license plate reader, and he was tracking like former girlfriends and all these other females and what have you, and said, oh no, we're taking steps, we're going to make sure that doesn't happen again, reduce the officers who have access to this sort of technology. When I was in Milwaukee this time last year, they were talking about adding facial recognition technology, getting more of the equipment donated, no less, not less. So, and that was when I said it was mostly white people at the meeting saying this is racist. It wasn't even black people there coming at me, hey man, we don't want no cameras. We already know what you're going to be doing and peeping and spying on us and all the way. Nope. It was white people who were in attendance. They had paraphernalia and everything. They were very organized. In the archives I recorded. The section, and I did think, they said for former officer Ayala, who I believe is a white person, might be so-called Hispanic, but still classified as white, they recommended a fine as opposed to court time. What? I disagree. And hey, let's get the victims. What do you think, ma'am? Do you think former officer Ayala, this should be a fine? You know, maybe a hefty fine, a few $1,000s. What do you think? Fine? Prison time. Would they say, send a message? You are supposed to be an officer of the law. You should be held to stricter standards, and you violated our trust. You need to do some time. You can serve it on the weekends, all of that. They say he first-time offender, so I'm not saying you got to do 50 years or nothing like that, but oh no, you need to do some time. Send a message. This ain't nothing where you can get a slap on the wrist. We are serious about that A word, accountability. That's what they say. Any hoodles. That section on Karmelo Anthony with a K, the black male who is now 19, privileged black male down in Frisco, Texas, now convicted of murder and sentenced to 35 years in greater confinement as a result of the stabbing of a white student in Texas. This happened, the stabbing part of it happened last year. Now, we had a person online who wrote about this case. I'll even go back and start with one. I said last year with this case, hey, Let's be truthful. We're in a system of white supremacy racism. We have to be honest about that. We can't lie and pretend and act like that's not so. Let's be truthful about that and what that means, being in a system of white supremacy racism. That means, hey, I can't be going in here and pretending I am a super tough black person, do whatever I want to. You say anything to me and I'm tough, I'll smack you. Nah, man. We got to be truthful about that. And even if you're an attempted parent, you have to truthfully talk to your children about this dynamic early and often. Said all this for years. When I first heard about this case last year, I said, you going to jail. Period. Ain't even nothing to ponder on, think about it. I said last year, I said it's going to be an all-white jury. Said that last year. Now we get to this point, and that did happen. I at minimum said, ain't going to be no black people on the jury. In Frisco, Texas, nope. Now we had people writing online. I saw lots of black people talking about this case for really since it happened last year and intensified when the trial picked up and everything this year. As I have consistently stated, I generally do not agree with black people about anything. That certainly would apply for this case. I would humbly submit this particular case. Anybody who says that black people are experts or black people are smart about the system of white supremacy racism, what it is, how it works, even smart about what it means to be classified as white, I would humbly submit the Karmelo Anthony case. No way. If anybody is ignorant about racism, it is black people. You know, we had a person online on my Facebook group for the C.O.W.S. They submitted, I was reported when they announced the sentencing for this case a few days back that Karmelo Anthony was sentenced to 35 years in greater confinement for this case. I think he would be really, if he has to serve the entire 35 years, he will be 54 by the time he's released. He's 19 now. But there was a person online who wrote, no cameras allowed during the trial, no blacks allowed on the jury, no impartial judge, and a suspect defense lawyer. My response to all of that, and some of that, that's what you heard from Karmelo Anthony's mother. I think Kayla is how you pronounce her name, K-A-L-A, Kayla, I think that's it, Kayla Hayes. She said some of the same things, that the jury, they had already made up their mind about her child. They had already determined that he was guilty and what they were going to do. She said she didn't think that that was the first one they said, that we weren't treated fair. My response to what the listener wrote, and respectfully to Miss Hayes as well, duh. That's not disparaging or anything. That's just, hey, we are in a system of white supremacy. What does that mean? That means if white people want no cameras to be in the courtroom, there won't be any cameras in the courtroom. Incidentally, I have seen a number of murder cases where sometimes they do say, ain't gonna be no cameras in the courtroom. Now, they did allow cameras in the courtroom for the Sade C. Robinson case, but again, whose decision is that? Duh. No blacks on the jury. Gus T said that last year. I don't live in Texas. I don't think I've been to Frisco. I have been to Dallas. I've been to Dallas. I've been to Houston. I've been to San Antonio. Go Wimpy! But I don't think I've made it to Frisco. That's it. I knew last year, it took about 60 seconds for me to look. What's the racial demographics of Frisco, Texas? Whoa, 10% Negro? I said it last year. It's on the archive. Ain't going to be no Negros on this trial. You already, and really, you know that before Karmelo Anthony got up out of bed on the day that this stabbing happened, before he got out of bed, he should have already known. Now, if something happens, I have to go trial, something like that, Negro culture, outbreaks at the school, anything like that, it's probably not going to be no black people on the jury. You already know this. This is not no shock and what? I thought jury of yeah. Come on. Come on. No impartial judge, and they are duh. You're in Texas. They brag about the death penalty in Texas. Did you read Texas Tough? Robert Perkinson, he was a guest on the Cows. They brag about their history of locking up niggers. Maybe you haven't been paying attention to all that, but I mean, you got to know all this in advance. That's why I played that segment of Neely Fuller Jr. If you missed that, you can go back in the archives. 2013, there was not involving children, but just another incident that involved counter violence with a black person and a white person. And Fuller was very explicit. You heard it right there. Hey, man, every time, white person, black person, violence, we lose. Even though the white person did die here, to have a 19-year-old black male convicted and sentenced for 35 years, I'm going to count this as a loss. Anybody who thinks this is a W, right on. I just heard from his mother. Karmelo Anthony's mother did not sound victorious at all. Not even close. She didn't even sound like this was a tie. I'm going to count this as a loss. Every time, and it's almost verbatim, everything Fuller said. We go in just like we're in the 7th grade, 10th grade. What did you say to me? That's exactly what he said. What did you say to me? You don't talk to me. Hey, man, regardless of what they say, what they did, called you a Negro 15 times, hey, man, we are in a system of white supremacy. Who am I going to have to answer to? Okay. Now, if we don't understand that, then we'll just continue to have incidents like this, and we can cry and sulk afterwards and appeal, and it wasn't fair, and it wasn't right. They already made up their mind about duh. We do not understand what it means to be white. We do not understand the system of white supremacy racism. And we end up making really bad decisions all the time. Don't talk to our children about the system of white supremacy racism. I said, if I had offspring, they're 13, 14, 15, up, anything over, hey, we are going to talk about this case, especially if we live in Texas. Like, ooh, school is out for a lot of places. We might have gone to the trial a day or two if feasible. Talk to this right here. You can explain to your child the logic. What do I mean when I say racism? Look at this case right here. And think about that. Look at this case right here. And think about that. Even this could have been, if Karmelo Anthony had stabbed a black dude, it could have been the exact same result, because that happens all the time. Cameron Graham stabbed to death in North Carolina over a THC vape pen. It could have been that, and no one would have hardly heard about this. I would keep that in mind and tell your children. I even thought, like, man, did black parents do that? Did attempted black parents talk to their offspring, males and females, about a case like this? What to do if you're at school and all that, defending yourself and what can happen? I think that would be, man, one of the most constructive things, and to make it not just a one-time conversation. This is something we return to. Have them do research about this case. Ask them questions where they can talk. What do you think about it? What do you think about what Karmelo Anthony did? What would you have done in that situation? What do you think about what he did now? Like, especially if you can ask them what happened then, and now we can see everything that happened and the trial and all that, and his family threatened and blah, 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 35 years. Now, what do you think about what Karmelo Anthony did? Especially if they were thinking, oh, I would have done the same thing. I don't take it. You can't let people be talking to you. I ain't no pushover. I ain't no chump. You ain't going to talk to me like that. Oh, okay. No problem. Okay. So now we wait 6 months. You still feel that way? 35 years? What you think? 35 years. 35 years. And I would, he's 19 now. He'll be 54 if he has to serve the whole sentence. He would be 54. What you think? A lot of people do cool things in their 30s. A lot of people do cool things in their 40s. Hey, he's not even 20 yet. A lot of people do cool things in their 20s. You're going to miss all that. Now, a lot of people do cool things in their 50s, but woo, it's a long time away. Have them write, hey, it's summertime. Use your brain computer. You can write a report. The Karmelo Anthony case. What did his parents say? No black people on the jury. The whole system is right there. Class, because this is class 2, because it started at school. See? System of white supremacy, racism, and the choices that we make. This is what happens. Right? Why you want to avoid these sort of dust-ups in public, because something that sounds like I think took about 5 minutes or less. Now you're going to have a good almost 40 years to think about that little 5-minute dust-up. And it sounds like you have a good 40 years by yourself to think about that dust-up. And now, should I have done that? Should I have known that they weren't going to treat me fairly? Should I have known I'm going to have to answer to a racist judge if I do something to this white boy? Talk to your children honestly about the system of white supremacy, racism. Fuller called that Negro culture. I have to say, I think he might be right. Talking about us, that's Negro culture, man. What you say to me, you don't talk to me. Come on, man. Did that win in this situation? Did that win? Karmelo Anthony looking victorious here? If anyone is ignorant about racism, it is black people. We'll see what happens on the appeal, but I don't know what the appeal is going to be. I would be absolutely stunned if they got a new trial or anything. It would just be, how much of this 35 is he going to have to serve? You know, maybe he can luck up and get some parole a little bit early, but and even I would pay attention if I had offspring. You kept hearing Karmelo Anthony's black mom, family members saying, look at my phone. They want us dead. They're not even satisfied with this. They want us, talking about not just Karmelo Anthony, because of course we want that nigger dead. They want the whole family dead. Let me clear my throat, say it one more again. Duh. You got to know that in advance. Medgar Evers, he was trying to do something constructive. End racism, white supremacy, doing the correct thing. James Meredith, black male privilege, trying to do something constructive, trying to work against racism. Veteran, trying to go to school. Tried the same thing with Ruby Bridges. They tried to kill James Meredith for trying to go to school. They threatened to kill his whole family, talking about James Meredith and Medgar Evers. Probably Ruby Bridges, too. You would have to know that in advance. If I'm a black person, if you upset white people, if you upset them because you were doing something constructive, or you upset white people because you were doing something not constructive, they might not just come for you. Hey, sometimes they come to burn down the whole black side of town because Leroy got on our nerves. You have to know that in advance. Duh. Now they want to kill our whole family. Duh. Got to think about that in advance. And hey, I can tell you, racists, they have really good memories. I've seen this before. Rosa Parks, I bring this one up regularly. Rosa Parks, Alabama, yes, she did not end her days in Alabama. She was in Michigan. Why? Racists have good memories. They will terrorize your whole family. That same thing. Rosa Parks wasn't doing anything destructive. She was trying to be constructive. Help black people. Mad that Emmett Till got lynched. Help black people be able to ride the bus safely without being raped, subject to racism. They terrorized her whole family. So certainly, Karmelo Anthony, you done killed a white boy. Come burn down your whole house with you in it. But you got to think about all that in advance. Fuller said, even be thinking before I get up to get in this kerfuffle. Now, what you done said to me, you don't talk to me that way. Who do you think you are? Okay, now what does this look like, not just today? What does this look like for the next 10 years? Oh, let me sit back down. Matter of fact, let me get out of here. Which is what I said last year. I don't want to participate in no track meet or school activity where I feel I have to have a weapon on me because somebody might get out of pocket like, man, I don't need to be at this event. Let's go home. I wait until we get our behavior corrected and then I'll go participate in the extracurricular activities. Speak to your children honestly about the system of white supremacy rallies. System of white supremacy racism. I think Fuller had said too. All these rallies and protests after the fact, certainly after the most powerful white people have slammed that gavel and made a decision. Waste of time. We have seen it all before. And we heard about the cross being burned in Chicago like it's Emmett Till days, 1950s. We ain't made no progress. Duh. Gus says that all the time. System of white supremacy racism. That's why the cows is here. Any hoodles. Folks can let me know. I am feeling very estranged from cows listeners, non-white people, victims of white supremacy in general, and I do not have offspring. But if there are attempted parents who trying to be truthful about white supremacy racism, did you speak with your children about this incident? Talking about the Karmelo Anthony trial. Did your children have thoughts about this incident? I would be very interested, like we've done programs with children before, parents before, the COVID-19 and such a few times. If attempted black parents, and you have your children, 17, 15, what are the ages, particularly if they're around the Karmelo Anthony age, high schooler type thing, late middle school, and the young people would be interested in sharing some of their thoughts, like what did they think about all of this? Did they keep up with this trial? Were young black people, were they following this? Did they have thoughts about all of this? I'd be very interested to hear some of their thoughts. And then attempted black parents. Did you speak with your offspring about this case? What did they say? What did you try to impress upon them about the significance and what they should remember, make note of about this case, how you would want them to behave if they find themselves in a situation like that where, they get confronted by a white person or something of this nature? How do you want them to respond? What do you think would be the best thing to do? Did you talk to them? How did they respond? Did you have multiple discussions about this? I think it would be very constructive, informative. If we could do it on the program, great. But even if you do it privately, I think there could be lots to gain. I seriously have your child write a report about this case. I would not let my child, I don't have children. If I had offspring, if I had the grandchildren and they were coming to hang out with me for a little bit, or nieces, nephews, whatever it is, man, as opposed to sitting around and watching TV all summer long, playing on their phone all summer long, hey man, you can do at least one constructive project. Less research. You can get 10, 15, 20 newspaper articles on this case. You can watch some of the news clips and what have you. Check out some of the interviews that Karmelo Anthony's mom and what have you have given about this case, even going back to when it first happened last year, and write a report. And in the context of white supremacy racism, this is my analysis of the Karmelo Anthony trial and what it reveals about the system of white supremacy racism. Have them write that sort of report, and you all can discuss. Maybe even get more information as the summer goes on. It can be a report that you all revisit, a topic that you all revisit for some time, but having them thinking about the types of decisions that they make when they're out in public. And these decisions can have lifelong ramifications. We're in a system that's not safe. Things can become violent in a heartbeat. And I can't stress enough, this could have easily happened where it could have been Karmelo Anthony and a black person got stabbed. Easily. That happens all the time. Cameron Graham, I just mentioned. This happens all the time. I would keep that in mind too. Just, man, being out in these groups and stuff, and you got younger black people. Are they armed? Are they on any sort of substance? What's their mental health? Have that in mind in terms of the company that you keep, and you end up finding yourself in, whoa, I didn't have no, what's going, what? Anyhoodles, let me drop an email if folks are interested, if they see a value to all of that. Let me know. I would be very interested. Parents, young folks, all of the above. Let's see. I'll get in quickly. This past Monday on the Cows, we had Eric Lischbau as a guest. White man suspected racist. We talked about his book that dealt with racism in Orange County, California, SoCal. That broadcast kind of exemplifies what I've said for years in terms of it is challenging because you'll have white people suspected racist, where I'm trying to extract some of the constructive information, where he's writing about white people who are trying to attack the electrical grid, white supremacists, that are trying to attack electrical grids here in the U.S. so that they can foment white supremacist objectives. He's writing about accurately white supremacists recruiting white people from the military, like Eric Rudolph, Joey 22, Mark Furman, to come in. You got sniper training, you got bomb expertise, all that kind of IEDs. You help us get on that sort of thing. He's so very, at least I think, very important material to get out in terms of current day threats. What racism is, how it works, what it means to be white, but the racism there, because he's sitting there talking about so-called minorities and calling everybody a minority. White people and white gays and black people and Hispanics and Jews, and everybody's a minority. And when I stopped to read passages, well, wait a minute, what you're saying here, it's not even true, and it's confusing. And he kept interrupting me and getting rowdy. Now, you can hear in that segment, I said, hey man, you're practicing racism with all this interrupting, especially it got to the point where I said, hey man, are you done? I'd ask him a question. He would talk. You finished your response? Yes, Negro Gus, I am done. I would go to start my reply. He would give me about 5 seconds, maybe 8 if I was lucky. And then he would immediately, wait a minute now, Negro, you don't talk all that. I'm just, like, wait a minute, I just asked if you would. Well, I'm not done. I got a few more things I want to say now. I didn't know you were going to talk fool. Like, man, I muted. I let you speak without interrupting and talking all over top of you. I didn't just give you 10 seconds. I let you speak. Why can I not get the same courtesy? And he did it over and over and over, and then had the audacity when I said, hey man, Lischbau, you are deliberately practicing racism. You're just going to talk over a black person, and particularly a black person who's caught you lying. I'm just going to talk all over top of you and not let you articulate your point. He said, I resent you saying that I practice racism. How dare you, trying to have an intelligent conversation and you don't even know how to talk and dialogue with someone. And I'm trying to explain to you what a conversation. You're going to get all expert, highfalutin with us, with me specifically. I said, Lischbau, has anyone ever accused you, a non-white person, accused you of practicing racism before? No. Oh, this is the first time. Somebody said, Lischbau, you are deliberately practicing racism, which he was. But you can go back and hear that one from this past Monday, if nothing else, to be disabused of your thinking that, hey, it's California, ain't no racists here. We got the beaches, sunny weather, and Kendrick Lamar. Wrong. Well, Kendrick Lamar is there, but still. White supremacy, racism, for sure. And get Mark Furman. Anyway, in the archives this past Monday, I was not even away like, oh man, we'll be ready to roll Monday, but we were ready to go in the archives. If you missed it, as I stated, we will be on the grind this week, so I have to kind of see what information is made available. Might have to broadcast in the week to kind of give an update on what constructive activities Gus T, or what constructive info Gus T has unearthed in 2026 as we encroach on the summertime. I guess, I don't know, what shall I say, significant moment on the planet, FIFA Cup notwithstanding and all the rest of it. The equinox, summer equinox, is approaching, as is so-called Juneteenth. I do not celebrate, but important markers on the calendar for those of us trying to make sense of our time and energy. Important things happening, maybe in alignment with what's happening. We'll have to see if Gus T has been on his counter-racist grind for 2026. Maybe some of the other folks as well, if you all have been getting things done, research, helping non-white people, or working on projects to help victims of racism like Gus T and yourself get a better grasp of what racism is, white supremacy is, how it works, things that we can do to produce justice immediately. We'll share. But that's it. We will call it a broadcast. Much obliged for folks tuning in. I'll check and see if folks have thoughts to share. Really, the thing I'm concerned about, the children, if there are folks who are interested, children, attempted parents interested in discussing the Karmelo Anthony case, let Gus T know. You can drop an email, untiljustice@gmail.com. For the people who follow on social media and such, drop a line and let me know. We can figure out date, time to make it happen immediately, but I do think it is very, very important. As I said, even if it's just making better decisions when we are in the presence of all non-white people, I could easily see something non-constructive like this happening, even if there had not been a white person present, just with, as Fuller said, Negro culture and the way that black people have been conditioned to think, especially when it's all black people. Oh yeah, that sort of thing could have happened 50 times over with all black people, and we would have never known Karmelo Anthony's name. It would have just been someone stabbed, black person stabbed, another black person gone, who cares, and we sentence them to whatever amount of time and move on with our lives. Cameron, I just keep saying Cameron, and even in fact now, how many of you all, did you know the name Cameron Graham? Okay. Anyway, that matter of fact, for Cameron Graham, sobriety would be best. Keep our brain computers working at a high capacity and modeling correct behavior so that the young people in their teens and such don't pick up all of our bad habits and doing the mad dog and vaping and THCing at 15, 16 when their brain computer is far from mature. Creator, remind us, stop saying not all white people are racist. Remind us to stop name calling and cursing people classified as black. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. No problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my conditioning. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.